Hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of the Parent Camp Podcast. I am April Draine, and today, I have the wonderful pleasure of having our Vice President of the Parent Camp, Miss Laura Gilchrist. Say hello to us, Laura.
Hello, everyone. Hi, April.
Hey, and we are not alone. We have also with us today one of our great parent camp coaches, Miss Emily Howell. Emily, can you say hello to everyone for us?
Hello there. I'm excited to be here.
Yay, 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 yay. We have Emily who has been a part of the original parent camp team. Am I correct in saying that?
I was pretty early on in the process, back in the Twitter days.
Oh, Twitter days. Yeah, it sounds right, Laura.
Yes, and she has been an integral part of our growth since, I think before COVID,
Mm-hmm.
Twitter chat days. And yeah, she was involved in all our early work that's led to what we're doing now.
Awesome. Well, we want to hear more from you, Emily. I mean, so since you've been a part of the parent camp since the evolution of the beginning of it, take us back. What did that look like when you all initially started? We heard from, and you'll hear it, listeners, in one of our episodes with Julie and Laura about how parent camp was initially started with those two. But Emily, you being one of the first coaches, what did that initially look like when you joined the team? And what were some of the things that you saw from the beginning, like some of the trainings or the needs of parents? Take us back, if you will.
All right. Absolutely. So I really got connected with Parent Camp early on from um, actually knowing Laura through EdCamps, which are
Hmm.
a really cool, kind of a model that Parent Camp grew out of in a way. I was a teacher and I was out going to these ed camps, these sort of unconference models where teachers would go and get our needs met as professional development needs, things that we were just looking for support. And I got connected with Laura through that and just learned that kind of that process and also got connected with those early days of the parent camp. We had a Twitter chat. I don't know if people even still do those anymore, but we had a Twitter chat that happened weekly, and that grew into a Zoom. And I'm sure they've talked about that before. But it was really exciting. I remember Laura took me out to dinner one night, and we got together and talked about coming in, and I was being invited to be one of the very first coaches when we officially started kind of expanding the parent camps out into being able to have a scalable model that we could go out and train schools. We have all believed deeply in the mission and the process for a long time, and it was just exciting to get to be a part of that on that ground floor. So of course, I jumped at that opportunity. At the time, I was working in my other job. My day job was a consulting job, and I had some flexibility and was able to just jump right in there. And so I got to be part of the first district level training that we did as parent camp.
Okay.
And
Right.
yeah. And so, just the experience of thinking through, how do we meet the needs of, the leaders and the buildings of so many different buildings, because even within one district that maybe has a lot of similarities across the district, there's also going to be a lot of need to differentiate, need to understand that this school might have some different challenges, different unique community dynamics than another school. And so it was really fun to kind of navigate that and just be part of getting people excited. That's the best part, I think, about parent camp from the training side of things, is just getting people excited. about something that they can't quite imagine until they've experienced it. And so
Yeah.
figuring out how to make that excitement grow and grow and grow, and then it inevitably pays off when they get to see it really happen in real life, and it always exceeds their expectations. Yeah.
Okay, so when you both met at camp as teachers, were you both talking as teachers? Laura, please feel free to jump in on this. Were you both talking as teachers? What were some of the things that you were speaking to Emily about that you probably can remember, or Emily, that you can remember that made you both interested, not just from a teacher standpoint, but the evolution or bringing on Parent Camp? What were some of the things that you can remember as teachers that you all probably were seeing that Parent Camp could probably help address?
Emily and I went to several parent camps.
Mm-hmm.
I helped organize several of them, and we were both very passionate about them, and we loved them. We loved it because we got to actually connect with other teachers, and
Yeah.
we
Mm-hmm.
got to build our network, our own personal network. We got to make more friends. We learned things, and it was really powerful at building connections. And so I'm so grateful. If it wasn't for EdCamp, I wouldn't have known Emily, and then
Mm-hmm.
all this that came about. So the power of relationships and connections cannot be
Yeah,
understated.
Okay, so you did the
for sure.
parent camp thing there, Laura. It's all about relationships and connections and
Yes.
community. I see how you did that. I see how you did that. So, Emily, you were in the educational space working as a teacher, correct?
Well, so that's a loaded question. I've been a
Oh, no.
teacher. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, I have been a teacher back in the earliest, I think, days when we were talking about the ed camp. I was in the classroom and
Okay.
then had moved into administration for a few years in a smaller private school. And then also I've worked as a consultant through a regional professional development center, working in schools all around Northwest Missouri, and actually as far south as down near Branson for our Missouri people. So kind of all over the place in urban and rural, and um, everything in between. And currently, I am back in the classroom as a first grade teacher in the North Kansas City School District, which is a
Look at
suburban
you.
district here.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
I
Welcome
taught in
back.
North Kansas City. I taught in North Kansas
Yeah.
City for, 16 years.
It's a
So,
great
yeah, lots of
district. Happy
good
to be here.
people and
Yeah.
good, yeah.
Yay. So, what have you seen since being in the school district, in the school system, and you've had so many unique lenses being in
Mm-hmm.
the different spaces in education? What have you seen from the parent side as far as parent need and the gap that may exist between teachers and parents that you feel Parent Camp is possibly addressing now, or however you want to answer that question?
Yeah, I think Laura already talked a little bit about just that power of relationships and the power of, being a part of a community. We all need to be seen, heard, and valued. And, I think that when it comes to schools, there's a lot of effort and concentration. I think even more as we go along in ensuring that teachers and that school employees and that students are um, having all of their needs met, and really looking at it from that more holistic lens of making sure that they have a sense of belonging in that community, trying to approach different initiatives with some sense of equity, some sense
Mm,
of making sure that we're meeting people where they need to be met. But it's funny because as much as we know all of those things, when it comes to parent um, engagement, we still a lot of times in schools, I see that we still kind of fall on that older model of the parents come to us and we
mm,
as a school deliver some kind of content to them. So that's not how we teach our kids really anymore. That's not how we teach our teachers anymore. But in many places, that's still how we are trying to engage with parents, is like they're just almost like they're students, like we're just bringing them in to teach them something. And, I think especially over the last few years, there's just such a need for developing community. Many of us in 2020 and 21 spent a lot of time alone. Kids were not in daycares, and parents were working from home, and a lot of parents still work from home because that just never changed again. And so I think having the opportunity to not just come into a school and sit and get and be told how to parent and how to help be kind of a secondary teacher, but having the opportunity to come in and connect and engage and let your voice be heard. I think that's so important. And I love the Parent Camp model, because you don't really have to work at that if you follow that model, because it's just what it's built to do. I think that everything should be the Parent Camp model. I think we should use it in corporate spaces and, everywhere that we're trying to have communication and make sure people feel seen, heard, and valued.
Emily, when you talked about, we tend to interact with parents as if we're teaching them, like we're kind of keeping them at arm's length.
Right.
And it's just the way that's always been done. But what's missing is that connection, that talking to each other, like knowing
Right.
each other. And if we don't know each other, our brains fill in what's not there.
Yes.
And it's often negative.
Yeah.
And so we have to, the only solution is being relational with each other, is talking to each other, and not just talking for like a minute or two about the weather with the same people you
Right.
always talk to while you're chasing your kids. But it's that actual dialogue about, what's important to me about this topic,
Right.
and then sharing our lived experiences. So, yeah. And I know schools, they want to have that, but how do you do that from this model, from the old model of, rows and herding people in and out after teaching?
Right.
So, Emily, how do you, with you now being back in the educational system, how are you, and you also having the unique perspective of how the parent camp model is, and Laura just alluded to it, not just the rows, but, more of the circles, engaging and trying to find ways to relate to each other, not just on the surface level. Have there been ways that you've been able to kind of use some of the parent camp model?
Yeah. I am in I think it's my third month back in the system after having been out for quite a while. But I think that so much of just the philosophy of what Parent Camp is just embedded in how I do things now, trying to ensure that the communication that I have with families is not continuously one way, but there's lots of opportunities for two-way communication. One of the things that we have talked a lot about in our parent camps over the last several years, whether it was virtual national camps or the local ones that we've helped support, one of the things that continuously comes up as a topic is social emotional needs, and not specifically like a curriculum like what we use with our kids, our SEL curriculum, but just a sort of emotional literacy and being able to talk about our feelings and communicate, recognize where we're at with our emotions, with our state of regulation. And so I think even being really intentional in how I help facilitate conversations that I might have with parents, based around just what I've learned as being a part of parent camps, not even about the magic of the format or anything like that, but just simply having so many opportunities to um, engage with so many different parents from all over the place, and recognizing that is such a felt need, even though most of us don't have the language around it. Um,
Mm.
so I try to be really intentional in how I communicate, how I reach out, how I stay curious. Simple things like when if I do have parents come into a meeting at school, making sure that we're sitting on the same side of the table, instead of
Yeah.
having space between us that is kind of walled off in a way with the table. Um, so yeah, I feel like once you get into it, it's just in the water. You can't really get away from it once you've embraced it. Yeah.
I like you mentioning even with something as simple as sitting on the same side of the table, because some
Yeah.
people may not even think of sitting across from the table as being a barrier. We've been so used to seeing that as a way of being formal and
Right.
professional, but when you're trying to engage to be on the same side of the table, that has a literal and a figurative meaning if I think about it more. But I'm appreciative of you just giving that as one example of how you're able to use some of the things that Parent Camp models and still bring it into the space that you're back in. Even though it's only been 3 months, I can already sense that you're bringing so much more. And I
Mm.
wanted to just mention, because we have you on as one of our coaches, and Laura, I don't know if we've mentioned this in any of our previous episodes, but can you tell the listeners what a parent camp coach is? I don't know if we've ever distinguished that.
Yes, a parent camp coach. So each parent camp team is made up of family, school, and community, usually about 10 people. And the coach is with that school for the whole year and the coming years after that. They're there on training day. We have an in-person training day, and then they help them with every parent camp. And I mean, the coaches kind of do the heavy lifting so that
Okay.
the point person and the rest of the team can talk together and focus on the fun things, building the networks and reaching out. And so they are an integral. They become a part of the community, the part of the school. They're getting helping with the data curation, the storytelling for the school afterwards. So it's a beautiful role.
Yeah. Okay.
And Emily, what was it like to go back to earlier, like when
Yeah.
we trained and we had that first training and you had the school parent camps. What stood out to you? You alluded to it, but take us into like one of your first parent camps and
Yeah.
what did you notice?
Yeah. It was really just an amazing experience to get to be a part of that first parent camp. Because parent camp's been trying to make a name for a little while, trying to kind of really build an identity. And, when we went into that first district that we worked in, and nobody knew us, like it sounded like a cool thing, but also, I think people are used to often having things added to their plate in an education space. And so while they were very warm and welcoming, they also, you could tell there was a little bit of skepticism of, what is this new thing that we have to do? We already do parent things. We have to do things for title funds or whatever. Um, and just being able to sit down at the table with different administrators and teachers and community representatives and parents and talk to them about, what is it that you hope for your school, as you participate in this, as you host this first parent camp, this very first experience with trying to build a parent camp community, and hearing them, some of them maybe for the first time really be asked, hey, what is it that you believe that your parents want to talk about? Or what is it that you as a parent really want to talk about and learn about and hear about? And, just that authenticity became really disarming. I feel like as we all got to just know each other so quickly, there was a lot of hesitation too, a fair amount of hesitation about what exactly it means to facilitate. And how, oh gosh, we have to find all these experts because we've identified that they really want to know a lot about, um, you know, scholarships, or they really want to know a lot about social emotional learning or whatever it might be. Um, and so walking them through that process of, yeah, actually, it's just an opportunity for us to learn together, and the knowledge and the wisdom is all here. Um, so it's such a great opportunity to learn from the community that you already have. Um, so I remember that very first school, when we went back out to actually do the camp, we'd planned, we'd been through the whole thing. I think we'd even rescheduled a couple of times because of the weather, but we finally made it out there and had the camp. And I remember a mom walking in, and she looked like she'd probably had a long day, maybe like my day's been today. And um, that probably wasn't the first place she wanted to be, but she was doing the work to be there as a mom. And I know she'd had some less than positive experiences with that particular school in her earlier history with them, and seeing that face, and then seeing her kind of walk through the process, go out to the breakout rooms, go out and talk to people, and then come back together when we had our celebration at the end, and share out. And it was like a different person, I mean, she was just, she cried like happy tears.
Oh, wow.
Because she was just um, so moved by the opportunity to be heard, and to be known, and to feel like her child was fully known. And I just think that I feel like I'm rambling, but also it's just, there's so much to say, because that's what Parent Camp does. And from the very first ones, and I think we just keep getting better at it, but that's the magic that happens, and we talk about it, but you don't know it until you really get to see it. And that was a really beautiful example of that.
The magic and the power of relationship. You and Laura have kind of hit, and that still comes back to the theme of what Parent Camp is about. It's about the connections, it's about the community, and just to hear, even on that first day, you can remember what that mother looked like, but
Right.
knowing at the end she felt heard, seen, that says a lot about the magic of Parent Camp. So, Emily, before we wrap up, you as a coach, and now again back in the educational space, what's one thing that you probably, and if you don't have an answer, that's fine, but I'm putting you on the spot. What's
Okay.
one thing that you, as a Parent Camp coach, what's a direction that you would like to see that you can uniquely bring to Parent Camp now that you're seeing what parents need and also seeing the direction that Parent Camp is trying to go? What's something that you desire to see as a Parent Camp coach for Parent Camp, as you mentioned earlier, trying to make sure that parents, that they feel seen and valued and heard as well?
Right. Well, my short answer is I just want all schools to do parent camps, um,
Oh,
because
simple enough.
I think that needs to happen. I just see the kinds of demands that parents have on their lives, and I see the kinds of demands that schools have based on so many different things. So it's kind of um a giant behemoth that we are working in the education system. um but it all works better from the very, very, very top of the district level, to the kindergarten parent, when we all are able to have our voices heard, and to know that that's real, and it's not just a survey that who knows what they're doing with it. And so I think my dream is that, you know, you mentioned, I think earlier in the podcast, you said something about the way we do things, and that just resonated in me. Right now, there's a way we do things, and I would love if Parent Camp could just become the way we do things, because that's what we need. We need to be able to hear every voice. We need to be able to share every voice, from all levels. And so I hope that in my role as a teacher, as a once again aspiring administrator, as a lifelong educator and learner, I hope that I can bring that to my own personal district. But I think that that's something that we all need.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's a good way to bring it to an end with Parent Camp, the way we do things.
Yeah.
Laura, any closing things you want to give to our listeners? And as always, I'm grateful to have you on, your voice, and Emily as a coach. Thank you for your voice. So any closing words that you would like to give or leave with the listeners, Laura, about anything Parent Camp, anything regarding future virtual parent camps, or even becoming a future coach? Who knows? But anything you want to leave with our listeners at this point? I'm just throwing it out there. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, a couple of points. A tip, like what Emily said, when she works with families, she sits in a certain way with them, so there's not barriers in between. And one thing that I do now is when I work with teachers, if I'm working in small groups, we always start in a circle with no desks, ideally no desks in between us, and we connect in what Emily was talking about was the special word that is what happens in Parent Camp circles, and it's called dialogue. And there's something, just back to your word, both of you, the magic that happens in dialogue. And we'll have an upcoming Parent Camp podcast about that. But and that's what Emily was saying. You don't know what it feels like or what it is until you are in it, because it's different than conversation or dialogue. And it's not, I think the big thing that I'd like to leave, it's not a presentation. We're so used to presentations, and this is opposite of that. And so I encourage you listeners to look up and consider dialogue and the geometry of how you set things up with people. With rows, we look at the back of each other's heads, and circles, we're seen by everybody the entire time.
Laura, Emily. Thank you both for taking the time just to be able to give our listeners just a little bit more of a inside view of what it's like to be a Parent Camp coach, and the model that we're not only trying to bring to the schools, but how once you just get a little bit of the magic, you can still take it to so many different spaces, from the smallest thing of just sitting on the same side of the table with someone and having the magic of dialogue. So, ladies, thank you both so very much. And as always, you can follow Parent Camp on parentcamp.org. And Emily, do you have an email address or any social media handles that you would like to leave with the listeners, or you want to just direct them back to Parent Camp? How can people get in touch with you?
You know what? They can get back to me through Parent Camp, and I would love to connect with them through our Parent Camp Mighty Networks. And I think, do we have some show notes maybe that we can drop that in?
We definitely will, but please definitely mention more about Mighty Networks.
Oh, yes. All right. So we do have our own kind of network, social media network that we are able to utilize with Parent Camp. And it's just a great way to connect with other people who have been part of parent camps across the country, parent camps that we've done virtually. We meet monthly for our national virtual camps, which are also a great way to just make connections with people. And, it's kind of like Facebook. You can make comments and posts and share information, but it's just, it's all about building our network, building our relationships, and building a community that is a lot bigger than any one of us can be on our own.
Awesome.
Beautiful.
Awesome. I love it. That's a great way to wrap up about building networks, but building community. So, not just through Mighty Networks, but just in general. So, again, ladies, Laura, Emily, thank you both so very much for your time. Listeners, we hope that you were able to gain some bits and tidbits from today's conversation. And again, refer to our show notes for other live links so that you can stay in contact with all things Parent Camp. And as always, we thank you, listeners, for tuning into Parent Camp, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.